Welcome to the second lecture of Strategic Management. I welcome you all to this lecture. Today we are having with us three students, Amna, Hamid and Umar. Today's expert with us is Mr. Awais. In our previous lecture, we talked about the introduction of strategic management. We talked about the role of globalization and how this globalization is impacting the nature of strategic management in organizations. So the perspectives we will talk about today is the competitive race, how the competition is reshaping the strategy formulation and strategy implementation process in the organizations, the positioning and conditioning, how the organizations may adjust to the strategic changes they are going to make, and then we will talk about the fit and stretch. We will talk about, again, organizational adaptability and flexibility. We will talk about strategy evolution process, strategy integration and resource deployment, organizational capacity to change. Now I will request Mr. Awais to please appraise us on these topics.
Thank you. What we are trying to do in this series of lectures, first of all, we are trying to explain you what is a strategic management, what are their key perspectives, and then there are different schools of thoughts. Then we'll move to formulation and then implementation. The reason we are trying to explain on perspective on strategic management, so in future, if you see a strategic document or you've been asked to prepare one, so at least you know how to read it and how to prepare it. So what are the perspectives on strategic management? If you look at the chart, there is a competitive race, which is fit and stretch, adaptability, evolutionary process, and integration and resource deployment, and then capacity for change. What we will try to do, we will look into them each and in details. And one thing, all the organizations, profit or non-profit, public or private, sometimes either they are influenced or they are forced to look into these perspectives or these dimensions to certain degrees. So let's start from first three, competitive race, fit and stretch, and adaptability and flexibility. What is a competitive race? George Salk, he said, if you are not faster than your competitor, you are in a tenuous position. And if you are only half as fast, you are a terminal. This competitive race is basically positioning as well as conditioning. In most industry settings, there is always competitive race going on, and most of the time you will see a very clear number one player. These industry leaders, they determine the directions and the pace of industry growth. They also attract both the benefits as well as the cost of breaking new grounds, innovations, open up new options and choices. So they basically do all this, and they get the benefits as well as they bear the cost also. Then industry may contain a small group of front runners whereby the leading position sometimes shifts from one to another. It can happen to relative marketing communication, a product innovation or introduction of a new service, and one person steals the market share from the other organization, and maintain it for a certain period of time till the other organization comes up with a new product. So they steal the positioning and this goes in the circle.
Sir, can we say that
Sure.
they shifts time to time? The
Depends,
benefits are shifting?
Depends, yeah. They can shift, but shifting cannot happen automatically.
Yes, sir.
There should be a new product, new service, innovation, marketing communication, innovative marketing communication. So those kind of things, or just one example, if you look at automobile industry, in Pakistan, if some company comes up and says, we will deliver you within 2 days, we will deliver you the new car within 2 days, while everybody is taking 15 days to 1 month. So they might able, though their product might not be as good as the other company, but they might able to steal that position for a certain period of time
Obviously, they took
till
the
the other people come back and they start giving in 2 days or 4 days.
Exactly.
So that's what it means.
Sir, I have a question. If we see today that there exists a large market of homogeneous products in the market, then how marketers should position their product to make their image better than the others?
I guess we should not confuse the positioning term with the one that we read in the marketing course, whereby it states that positioning is the image of a product in the mind of the consumer in comparison with the other products. In the strategic management course, this positioning means that how a company is growing, what is the relative market share of the company, whether the company is a market leader or not, and Mr. Abbas is actually trying to clear the concept that this positioning shifts. Even if the products are homogeneous, then the rule of thumb is you have to focus on the services side of the product so that you can gain more relative market share or you can gain the leadership position. Similarly, if you are operating in an industry that is having a heterogeneity capacity, you can do so by going about the product differentiation, offering a new product or coming up with the innovation as Mr. Abbas rightly identified.
Thank you.
Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Conditioning is basically how well the race is run. That reflects the conditioning, the shape and the fitness of the organization. And the conditioning of organization is reflected in terms of degree of its efficiency, whether it carries out its task and achieve the goals, in terms of ability or capacity to respond to change, its ability to operate at satisfactory levels of performance in difficult circumstances. Okay, so that's how company can condition themselves. It's basically their fitness and their shape. Now, if you look at second, fit and stretch, all organizations choose the race which best fit for their capabilities. It's not possible that a small company, a small oil products company start fighting with the PSO. Or, so that they have to remain in their boundaries. They cannot go beyond them. They also need to identify their particular strategic match. As I said, if you are a $100,000 company, so you play your games from 50,000 to 200,000. You can't play with 200 million company, so you can't compete with them. And they pick their competitive distance and train themselves to perform even in their environment if it changes around them. So that's basically what the fit and stretch is. Stretch, sometimes if you are a $100,000 market company, you want to compete or a company which is offering same services, but that's a $200,000 company. So you have to stretch yourself with some product line, introduction of new products in that line, and you can compete with them. But you have to remain in that boundary. That means stretch. But you can't stretch to $200 million.
So I have a story here. Sorry.
Please go
I
ahead.
have a story here that may, explain the concept that we are talking about. You may have heard the same old story of a hare and a tortoise. There was a hare and there was a tortoise, and they planned for a race, and then hare slept in the middle way, and then tortoise won the race. And the moral of the story is slow and steady wins the race. After the race was finished, the rabbit, the hare, started considering what went wrong. And it realized that because I did not focus on my core competencies, I slept in the middle way, that made the whole difference. So he invited the tortoise again, and then there was another race. That race started, and hare was out of the finish line, and the tortoise was nowhere in the scene. Now we are having another moral of the story is that is fast and furious wins the race. The tortoise again thought that something went wrong, and I cannot compete with the hare if I play on the same ground. So he decided to invite the hare for another race, and this time on a different track. The race started. The hare went like anything, and when he was about to the finish line, it realized that there is a stream passing by, and he cannot cross it actually. The tortoise, slow and steadily moving towards the stream, jumped into the stream, and it was out of the finish line and won the race. Now the moral of the story is, if you work on your core competencies and identify a playing ground, you can even win a race, even if you are not having the best of the competencies as your competitors have. So we are having a lot of races today. By the time, because the hare and the tortoise were into so many races, they became friends. And then they planned another race. And the race started. Tortoise was on the back of the hare, and they reached at the stream in no time. And then the tortoise allowed the rabbit to share the burden in the stream, and then both of them were across the finish line in less time. So this calls for a concept that is called coopetition. There are circumstances when companies cannot compete, it is not favorable for them. So in those circumstances, it is appropriate to go about the coopetition concept.
Exactly.
So what we are talking about, the adaptability and flexibility and fit and stretch, this requires organizations to think about the resources they are having and think about the environment in which they are operating to decide what is the best fit for the organization.
Okay.
Yes, sir,
Or
I
for
have
the
a question. Sir, as you discussed fit and stretch, so in current scenario of Pakistan, how organizations identify their fit and stretch?
Good question, but difficult to say. Depends on the organization. They should know the ground they are going to play the game, how big the ground is, how many competitors are there, what are their strengths, and we will go into details later on. But to answer your question, let me finish this first session, and I'll give you an example, a case study of Pakistan telecommunication industry. That will give you a much better idea of what you are asking. Now, the third one is adaptability and flexibility. Our famous saying is that adaptable survives. There are two different approaches to define future. Last time we discussed this, and strategic management teaches to all of you to establish an appropriate point of balance between both of them. One perspective is informal approach. Informal approach, as last time we discussed, is initiative, instinct-based, qualitative, and gut-based. Second approach is formal. Formal basically is a number-based, objective, quantitative, and brain-based. So when sometime you need to have a point of balance between both of them. You can't win only with informal, or you can't with formal.
So, how do they balance their informal and formal approaches?
Sometimes you look at numbers. If numbers make sense, then your gut feeling is that you can stretch these numbers to 10% more. So basically you are depending on both. So that kind of flexibility you should have. The other thing is you need to have, all the organizations need to have flexible attitude towards running their businesses. And sometime when the environments are simple and stable, even central rule organizations or the whatever systems they have, they can survive because there is no drastic change happening in the environment.
So, but if we consider Pakistan, there is a large uncertain kind of
Depends.
condition
In
here.
certain industries it's very stable.
Yes, sir.
Certain industries it is.
Yes, sir. There are
it is
certain
not.
industries.
Yeah. So, but when the environment becomes more complex and dynamic, like you said in Pakistan nowadays in situation, it's not only in Pakistan, it's almost in all South Asian
Most of the
countries.
countries.
And
Sir,
then
it
organizations.
varies from industry to industry, I think.
Yeah, it varies from industry to industry. When the environment becomes more complex and dynamic, that time organizations need to make adjustments in pace with the given rate of change. So that's if they have a flexible attitude towards doing business, it's easy for them to adjust themselves according to the change which is happening to the environment. So that's basically what we have discussed. Now, let me give you a very interesting case study of a telecommunication in Pakistan, which will explain these three elements, perspectives which we have discussed. Interestingly, there are, if you look at chart, there are four major players in telephone industry. There is a Mobilink, Ufone, Warid, Telenor. Mobilink, which started in 1994. Parktel is the oldest one, started in 1991. The rest are recently new ones. For last 2 decades, Pakistan mobile phone industry had provided tremendous opportunities for foreign investments. Teledensity is more than 50%, 90 plus million subscribers, while our population below 30 is only 100 million. So it's very close. 5 international mobile companies, as I said, they are competing with each other. If you look at this chart, in March 2007, Mobilink was a very clear market leader with 35% market share. Interestingly, Ufone, Telenor, and Warid, which all have the foreign investors, have taken over after 2002. They were competing for number 2 position. So Ufone has 21% market share, Telenor 20%, Warid about 18%. If you look at the June 2009 chart, though Mobilink lost 4 share points, but they still kept their leading position. Okay? Ufone maintained their market share 21%. Telenor got 2 share points and they increased their market share from 20 to 22%. Warid also jumped from 18% to 19%. Interestingly, a new player recently came, a China mobile company, Zong. They also grabbed 7% market share. What happened, I mean, what we were trying to explain to you, that Mobilink, though lost the market share points in extended market, but kept the leadership position by continuously breaking the new grounds. Fit and Stretch, Warid and Telenor, as per their investment size and resource capabilities, had decided to enter in the competitive race with Ufone, and they were fighting for number 2 position. Number 2 position, interestingly, shifted many times. Sometime Warid came up for a certain period of months, then Ufone took it back from them, sometime Telenor came up. Reason was their products and their marketing communications. If you look at most of telecommunication companies in all over South Asia, their main theme of marketing communication is based on sentiments, family-oriented concepts. Ufone is the only company which can claim that all their ads are made in Pakistan. They are local ads, concept as well as their preparation. They came up with the funny side of advertising. And time if their advertisement is very funny, people, youth like it too much, so they grab the number 2 position. When their ad is not that strong, Telenor ad is much stronger than the Ufone, Telenor takes the number 2 position. So this is what we meant about these 3 concepts, how they work in strategic management. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's look at the rest 3 of them: evolutionary process, strategy integration and resource deployment, and capacity for change. If we look at the evolutionary process, the life cycle approach to strategy and strategic decision making is used to describe product, organization, as well as industry cycle, each of which produces a constant interplay within the organization between building up and eroding down forces. Every organization, from their inception, has to go through a complex and energy-consuming activities of survival. And during this struggle, they have to reach to a maturity position, and from maturity position, sometime they can go and start declining. So strategic management, what teaches you is that it directed at ensuring over the long-term growth which outstrips erosion and the organization stays intact. So that's basically what we are talking about here. Now, strategy integration and resource deployment. Managers need to develop overview skills, simultaneously see the parts as well as the whole of the organization and interlinking factors that tie the elements together. If you look at the chart, you can see the business cooperation may be pictured as an organizational jigsaw. Managers normally being given set of guidelines when they attempt to fit such pieces together. The extent to which the management group adjusts and rearrange the elements is determined by the demand of the environment. So the manager has to mix and fix the jigsaw puzzle according to the guidelines he has been given and the environment and the level and quality of available resources. Okay? This constant need to recombine and reshape means that management must be able to focus on individual units as well as their place and fit within the organization as a whole. Last, organizational capacity for change. The lack of environmental stability and predictability requires that managers and organizations constantly and actively manage change to survive. Can give you a best example that during the last decade, the picture habits have changed. The old traditional cameras and film is declining. Digital cameras are fast growing, and this is the revolution, mobile phone cameras. Change is constant, yet varies in degree and direction, produces uncertainty, yet is not completely unpredictable, creates both threats as well as opportunities. Best described by a country head of a digital marketing company. It's an Indian company. He said, "My work involves managing a business that is constantly evolving in an industry and technology which is rapidly changing." So he's on a constant move to fight the change and adapt the change. Coping with the process and effect of change involves developing a capacity to deal successfully with uncertainty and complexity. Doing so over the longer term and in an environment that constantly shifts is crucial to any organization to survive. Here, I would like to give you another example. If you look at a company whose brand was number 5 in the world, $20 billion company. It was highlight the financial strains faced by established companies when disruptive technologies erode their traditional revenue streams. That's Kodak. Eastman Kodak Company, which was undisputed world leader in every form of imaging for 125 years and plus. It has come under tremendous pressure for the last 20 years when the imaging market transformed from traditional film, paper, and chemical-based to digital. How a company which has ruled the imaging industry for more than a century and with a brand which was ranked among top 5 most valuable brands of the world has reached the stage in 2005 where analysts believe that company will ultimately have to restructure its debts in or out of bankruptcy court. Kodak current situation attests that the problems are compounded by the speed at which the digital technology is spread around the globe, and Kodak failed to keep the pace with the rate of change. That's the failure of Kodak. So by these two examples, what we try to explain to you is all those perspectives when you look at any document, strategic management document, so you can figure out that where those pieces are fitting. Okay, thank you very much.